On this episode of More Talk, we're going to be interviewing one of our prominent individuals in our community. For many, no introduction is required, but for those that may not be familiar, I'd like to introduce you to Abdullah El Talib Mosi Bey. And he is the author of an exciting new book, which is a result of years of research called How Her Venus and Moon Rule. Islam, brother, how are you this morning?
Oh, brother, thank you for having me again.
Absolutely. Our pleasure and honor, by all means, always having you. It's a great pleasure. For those who may not be familiar, could you perhaps let us know how long you've been a historian practitioner? I know that many individuals know you as one of the prominent etymologists that teach us about the meanings of words, how to use them, the correct handling of that instrument, the word. But as a historian practitioner, how long have you been at this particular art, and can you give us a little bit of your background there?
Yes, about 27 years. I met Taj Tariq Bey. Most people know who he is in October 1993, and that was the time in which he gave me the George Washington letter to the Muhammad ibn Abdullah, the date is December 1st, 1789, and that began my journey to Moors Masonry. I read that letter several times, and what I wanted to do was place that letter to a broader historical context, go more into that, to give people a clear concept of the letter. If you read the letter by itself, it's good, but if you place it in a broader historical context, and that's what I did with Moors Masonry 1 and 2. Part 2 is not like that. Part 2 will be available next year, spring of next year. But I wanted to make that available, make that broad conceptual, contextual connection to the letter. So, say about 25 years studying. I've been writing for years. I really wrote when I was in college for the Wit newspaper, and so this was just and I, did research and so I have a degree in sociology, a master's degree in social work. And then in my studies in sociology, I was required to write a lot of write a lot of papers and do a lot of research. So I did a lot of extensive research, many books. So I learned those skills while we're at Glasgow State College, now called Rowan University in Glasgow, New Jersey.
Did you ever run into the characters such as Blumenbach or any of the sociologists with the race paradigm?
Not while I was in college.
Right.
Wasn't taught. I didn't. That was not part in my studies.
Not part of the curriculum.
Carl Linnaeus, Johann Friedrich Carl Linnaeus, and Francois Bernard, and so Karl Marx. I knew about Karl Marx.
Right.
Yes, but definitely that was not part of my studies.
Well, as a journalist, also, I don't know if our listeners are familiar. We'll show a better picture of this when this airs. But this is also something that you have done for our community.
Absolutely, I'm very proud of that. I've been my first newspaper was the Al-Moroccan Star with Taj Tariq Bey. That was the newspaper of the Moorish Boards of the Round Table. I was the chief of that newspaper. We actually put out our first issue in the spring of 2001. And then I also worked on a newspaper called the Moroccan Light that was actually printed and distributed in California. So I did some editorial work with that. We actually, Ras Mariah V. Bey did the layout. Ras Mariah V. Bey of rvbaypublications.com. She actually did the layout for that paper. And she Ras also came on board with us in 2002. And she did the layout for the Moroccan Star as well. Then I put out my news prior to the Moroccan Star. I put out the my newsletter called More Civil Letter back in 1995. Eight and a half. That's the name of the site, and that's eight and a half. I have to get back up, which is the eight and a half by, which was the 8.5 by 11 newsletter, and I expanded to newspaper format back in 2003. So went from the newsletter to a newspaper format to a website. All right. So I've been at this for a while, research, writing, uh, extensive writing, going to the Library of Congress, going to the National Archives at Philadelphia, going to the Pennsylvania Historical Societies, going to researching the treaties between the Moroccan Empire and European powers between the early 1600s into 17 to 17 or 18 or early 1800s. And I found those in the Consolidated Treaty Series. I've done extensive research for all my books. I tried in providing a voluminous amount of documentation.
You definitely know from which you speak. You have looked at the empirical evidence for yourself.
Yes.
Not just listening to what others have to say about it, but you've gone to Washington, you've looked in the archives, you've gone to Philadelphia, you've looked at the documents, you've reviewed these for yourself and found the information to be true, and you've found other information not to be as proposed. Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to jump into this by looking at the title of your book, How Her Venus and Moon Rules. And can you tell us, relative to that, what is the prominent role that our Earth's moon plays in the mother principle?
All right. The role that our Earth plays in the mother principle is that it brings forth life. It sustains us, fruits and vegetables. And so the role the Venus plays and the moon plays, and that is a biorhythmic relationship.
Okay.
The cycles of Venus and the cycles of moon brings about that life, stimulates that life that brings about fruits and vegetables. And we definitely get more into detail as we could go on. But that is the role is that of Earth is that it's a womb, it brings forth life. And that's the relationship that women have. You see the correlation of the womb of Earth and the womb of woman. Woman has the divine position to bring forth life on this plane. And so that needs to be the purpose of this book, is to restore that respect and honor of the divine power of woman into the fabric of society.
So this is really, you're helping us to appreciate the cosmology being the system and woman playing a vital role as part of that cosmos, that system, the dynamics of the principles of these heavenly bodies and the principle of the importance of the woman here on this planet. How did this concept, which you explain in your book, was very well known at one point in time, how did this come under attack?
Well, this has been a period of centuries, which if we can look at the Inquisition period, but prior to that, even going back a couple thousand years ago, when you had ancient civilization is based in matriarchal and matrilineal and matrifocal. And matriarchal means that there were societies that were predominantly governed and ruled by women. Matrilineal means that the wealth and power and sovereign power is passed down to the mother side of the family. That is still fixed. That has been suppressed. So what you now have is the usurpation of that principle, the suppression of this knowledge. So there's been a concerted effort of a period of centuries to suppress this knowledge and to usurp the power, the divine position, divine power from women. And so so as a result of that, you have a distortion of ancient fertility sites. You have the legislation, the colorful legislation to suppress women. You have the teachings, the colorful, distorted teachings that the women's menstrual cycle is unclean. And as a result of that, women can't preach in the pulpit. Women can't hold certain positions, but men did that. That was orchestrated by men to usurp that divine power to govern the resources that women was given through divinity.
So there was a these perpetrators, of the distortion were seeing to it that a patriarchal system was put into place to usurp and suppress the matriarchal, in which a greater respect for woman, as well as woman's place within the important role of the cosmology and the system and the cycles that you're speaking of. And if I can ask, going back, what was the original name of the moon? And if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. One of the ancient names, the Sumerian name, is Sin, S-I-N. And you can see how that's been twisted, turned upside down, and given a very distorted, connotative meaning. It's so far away from its original meaning and application. So no one on this planet can take to commit a sin. That is a context in which we use that word. It's wrong. The colorful context. You can say, I can see sin tonight. I'll honor sin. I can gaze at sin. Let's put it in this ancient context. But to commit a sin, how do you commit a sin? Unless you're all right. Now if you're using it in this context, committing a sin, that only would apply to women, meaning that fertility. We talk about the committing of sin if we're going to use that context. The moon governs the menstrual cycles. The word menses means moon. The 28-day menstrual cycle of women. So if you want to call that committing a sin in this proper sense, its relationship to woman, to the moon. But sin doesn't mean a bad deed. That's a connotative meaning. Right? If I hit you over your head, Abdullah committed a sin. No, I didn't.
Right. So that we're talking about biology. And the biomechanics of the rhythmic order of the cosmos relationship with women. We are mostly, as many people know, mostly made of water. And the gravitational force in which the moon has on our planet also has that same type of effect on our bodies, being mostly made up of water. The yin and the yang, the pull or the weighing, the way of the tides. You can imagine if the oceans, as large as the oceans are, covering most of this planet, are affected by the moon, then one would certainly think that an individual human, their biology would certainly be affected by the weighing of the moon in its cycle, and the same thing being true with respect to women. I guess the big question that comes to mind is this something that was hidden by certain orders like the Masonic orders of today? Or maybe you can clarify that for us.
Yes. You have hidden as well as distorted. Let's go. You look at there's an order called the Ancient Arabic Order of the Nobles of the Mystic Shrine, now called Shriners International. That was established by Walter Fleming in 1871. What Walter Fleming did, as people can see this, you see the image that the Shriners use, the Moorish scimitar placed above the crescent moon, and the five-pointed star representing Venus. Now, this has been given a distorted connotation. The five-pointed star has been viewed as evil. You you see those in the heavy metal groups that use the five-pointed star within a circle, or you will have something saying something evil. And the reason I didn't say satanic, the reason I didn't say satanic, because satanic relates to the Saturn, the planet Saturn. So
within normal nomenclature,
all of this belongs to us. The Moorish scimitar, the crescent moon is the symbol representing the moon, and the five-pointed stars by five cycles of Venus, we will go into. But the way this is configured is actually represent a suppression of this ancient knowledge, cosmological and astronomical knowledge of the cycles of moon and Venus. So I would not advocate our brothers to wear this in this formation. But our brothers, some know, there's many who do not know, and they see this as a symbol for the Shriners.
right?
And they wear it proudly.
Right.
Meanwhile, the Europeans who do know laugh behind their back. Our brothers have no idea what they're wearing. They have no idea what this means.
I had gone to a pawn shop here locally, and they have a dollar box. Anything in the box is $1. And I looked into it, and there was an emblem that was in the box. And it was about the size of a silver dollar. It was copper, and it had a picture of Woodrow Wilson on it in his Shriner's garb. And the wording that was on it was in Latin, and I went and I looked that up. Matter of fact, as we're talking about this, I'll show a picture to our viewers, and for our listeners, I'll describe it. But it had this picture of him wearing a fez with the Shriner's symbol, or what people take as being the Shriner's symbol. And the wording was in Latin, and when I had it translated, it says, "I know your secret," which I thought was pretty profound.
Yes.
So this is something that those, at least the upper echelon, or those in the oligarchy at that level, do understand, perhaps more so than the common individuals at your local level would understand these historical facts to be as they are. Now, do you feel as if that information today in the orders are purposefully suppressed for any reason of usurping this information still today?
You mentioned that at the lower levels, this is not dispensed. You have, particularly among the Moors classified as black, Negro, colored, and African Americans, you have the elite know this. This is how they maintain the power, because they can keep it away from the masses, controlling the literature and determining what literature is dispensed to the people, what literature goes into the curriculum in schools on every level. That's tremendous power to govern that.
Knowledge is power.
To legislate what goes into the history books and social study books, geography books, because the ambiance controls these institutions. How the Bible is interpreted, You know, there's three German theories that are used. It's called hermeneutics, biblical interpretation. So they use in biblical and hermeneutics, they're guided on how to interpret the Bible. They don't use ancient texts, Sumerian texts, or Babylonian texts, to which to guide. So what are they using as their principles to which to interpret the Bible? Yes, you got a degree in hermeneutics, but what principles are you using as your guiding, interpreting factor
And
to
and and, and in the power of that, brother, what you're saying, what you're explaining to us is that they have legislated the individual consciousness, their belief
yes, yes,
systems, the knowledge
yes,
and the knowledge being knowing what was alleged or written, no ledge, the understanding that what a person perceives to be their reality is in fact the reality in which they play out. So that's pretty powerful.
absolutely, absolutely. They even you have what's called censorship. Censorship. And what does that mean? Censorship. Who determines what guidelines? Who decides the guidelines for censorship? Well, who decides that this is a bad book and therefore it's going to be banned? How's that decided? Who's doing it and how's that decided? So that's even part of legislative censorship.
Sure, sure.
And that's all part of the Inquisition policies.
That even comes down to that right of self-determination.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I we here. I'm in the land of flowers in what we call Florida, and there's a storm coming in today off the coast, and which is interesting in that I'm speaking with you as the storm is coming in, because it makes me want to ask the question of what role has this disconnect of our understanding of the importance of um, the majesty of women, their important role in the cosmology, that not being in our hive mind, collective consciousness, that knowledge that has been censored. Uh, what kind of role does that play on, let's say, the weather and Earth itself? And maybe you have some insights you can share with us on that.
The universe is mental. All is numbers. We are energy. The there's a our activity that includes Europeans as well. That includes everyone on this planet. And I just want to be practical in my answer. It's our not being connected with nature and having the respect for nature. So we do things that will bring about disaster, you know, uprooting too many trees. Just want to be practical in my answer. So you have corporations that are controlling that, and they're uprooting trees and not keeping the ecosystem at the center. The laws of nature and nature's God has to be at the center of what you're doing. That dealing with forestry, cutting down too many trees for paper and chemtrails, cars, with that, emit this, these fumes that go into the atmosphere, that lack of respect and honor to the divine principles of nature and woman brings about this destruction. It's what we're doing as a result of the lack of this knowledge. So making plastics bottles as opposed to glass bottles. When I was growing up, I never saw I never saw plastic. I didn't see plastic milk that was in glass jars, sodas that were in bottles. This is when I was 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I did bottles. All these plastics. You see that everywhere. So this what brings about this imbalance. So we're creating with our action, and that action is because of the lack of knowledge of the laws of nature and nature's God and divine principle of woman.
Yeah, we're seeing all types of things happening in the ocean. We're seeing these kelp beds dying. We're seeing the oxygen changing. We're seeing a shifting of temperatures of the water. We're seeing in these catastrophic effects now taking a global impact, not just on the cycle of the inhabitants of the seas, but as that relates to our food sources, our means of future community, and again, we're talking about everyone. We are talking about man, everyone on this planet, and this is at a point now where it's very close to, from what I've heard scientists say, very, very close to a point of no return, where it's going to be, or at least they are stating, I don't believe so. I think that it may be a point of no return where we may not be here, but the planet, fortunately, will mend herself. We have just been upon it acting more in the capacity as a fungus or a plague or a cancer upon her, opposed to being that, that steward, the caregiver, to ensure the healthiness of this symbiotic relationship, and us being of service as Mother Earth provides us with all of our needs. There's nothing that anyone actually should ever be for want of, because the planet is such within the cosmology. There is enough for everyone to go around. We throw out more food just in this country alone to feed the entire planet. If we were just not to throw it out, maybe because of some type of, I heard about a story yesterday. A guy is now a millionaire because he started a company selling ugly fruit, because it just, wasn't something that the stores would accept, and vegetables, because of the way it looked, not because of its nutritional value or anything of that nature. But so as not to ramble, I'd like to ask you if you had something to convey to the mothers and the daughters, to our sisters now and in the future, those future mothers as well. What would you convey? What would you impart to them that you feel is of importance to communicate?
My sisters, you have a divine role in governing the planet and governing society. You have your divine intuitive mind, that divine connection you have with the cosmic records, the cosmic memory. You bring forth life through your womb, and also bringing forth creation through your mind. That's a divine role. So what I would say is that to acknowledge your divine role and position you have in civilization, and begin to uphold that. We have to have sisters begin to, take my book or principles and concepts that are expressed in my book and make it their own. Women have to step up. They don't look for the males to do it. Women take the lead in civilization and begin to restore this ancient knowledge of civilization and divinity, the natural law connections that that the earth has to woman and to civilization, to government. And that's what I would have to say. Just stand up and take your place in civilization.
So it's almost as though you're expressing that of course, the role of womanhood is something in which no other individual, a male, has the capacity in any manner to impart the same abilities or play the same important role. And for our societies, if you take into account a society which has not historically, consistently, over the annals of time, had your best welfare at heart, then it would be logical that as it relates to matters of this nature, they also too would not have your best welfare at heart, nor the welfare of everyone except for a select people, because it does not serve their best interests. So what you're saying is that the woman also needs to look at rebirthing this herself, in almost demanding this respect of her role, her importance, so that she can be that vehicle that places the cycle back into its correct track, as it were, and allow for this healing and mending process to begin anew, because otherwise we're off track. We're out of line.
Absolutely. That's what we talked about, the earth being out of line, that we're not in harmony with earth. So therefore there's an imbalance. That we created this imbalance with our non-caring actions towards nature.
Something that is not in the correct ease or easement, it's diseased or disease.
Yes.
And it's been in this sick cycle, but with things being secular in nature, cycles do come back around. And it's through these types of communications and individuals such as yourself playing these important roles as ambassadors of truth, educators, researchers, going out and finding the empirical evidence and then making it available in the previous works that you've done, as well as this one, which I'd like to ask if you can inform our listeners and viewers how they might be able to have a copy sent to them. And I'll go ahead and make sure that that information is placed up on the screen as well. And we'll certainly be putting that on the MoorishDirectory.com, as well as links for individuals to obtain. But can you inform our listeners and viewers how they can get a copy of this very important book, How Her Venus and Moon Rule?
Right. To get a copy of my book, How Her Venus Rule, you go to moorsandmasonry.org. Moors and the word and masonry.org. Definitely, I want to thank you for that, Brother Jonathan. For your humanitarian work that you continue to do with MoorishDirectory, a very important source of information, and helping bringing out uplifting fallen humanity, and also bringing our people into the Moorish national divine body politic. Thank you, brother, for your work.
Thank you very much. And we are extremely honored to have had you with us today. And on behalf of our listeners and viewers, I thank you. And I thank you in advance for your continuing work and continuing contributions to our community. And I am certainly one that will heavily promote and recommend that not just women, but men as well to read this. It's critically important that we all have this information. We're no longer living in a time where information is being held from us, but understand that we are coming from this information era into what is now the application era, where this information in which we have ingested or are ingesting must also be appropriately and properly applied. This is how we become our own remedies to these scenarios which beseech us. And again, I'd like to thank you for another very important and valuable contribution. And we look forward to speaking to you in the future, brother. And until such time, I wish you safe travels, well, and mind, spirit, and body, as well as complete prosperity.
Thank you, brother.
Absolutely. Islamism.